So, welcome, thank you so much. And first of all, huge congratulations. That is so much progress to be made. And I'm so glad that we are talking today about sharing our voice in commercial real estate, because it is really all connected. So today we are at Pod Pow Her, and we have some of the most powerful women here that you guys are going to hear from. And we've worked really, really hard leading up to this to make sure that this is going to be something that you're going to be able to go home and go, I really learned something that's really actionable. This makes a lot of sense. So that is our goal today. We want to inspire you, entertain you a little bit, have a little fun, make a little laugh, but also really give you something actionable. So a quick introduction. I am Jenn. I'm president and CEO of the Smart Agency. We are a company that exists only to advance commercial real estate and finance through effective communications. And we do that because we are so passionate about the built environment. We believe that this is how you are going to advance social impact. This is how we are going to preserve stability economically across our country. And people outside this room do not understand our industry. And that is the problem. As a general public, people don't understand it, and that's why we're here, because we have to share our voices. We have to tell them about the people and the projects and the work that we are doing. So now I will introduce you to some women who are actively doing that, and I'll tell you, you mentioned, someone mentioned being a little afraid of this. I myself have pod fright. So these ladies are true superheroes. I will start by introducing Danielle Sprouls. She is our illustrious president-elect. She will be your president next year of Peru Orange County. She is a commercial real estate maven, attorney. She's worked on transactions across the whole U.S. And she is the podcast host of Unscripted Pivots. This comes out every Wednesday, and it's an interview series, and she dives into these stories about every single person sitting in these seats and how they got to where they are. Really beautiful, really, really incredible. We're so excited to have Danielle. Next, we have Nicole Sanchez. You guys, Nicole is fiery passion and intellect, okay? This woman is the host of The Construction Influencer. She brings together the movers and shakers in the construction industry. She does interviews, she talks about that. And on top of that, she's the director of project development at Driver SPG. So that's a big job. And last but definitely not least is Miss Pam Scamardo. Pam is the CEO, founder, I assume, founder of TPK Properties, and also Let's Go Create Wealth. She's also the director of the Cal State Fullerton Real Estate Center. So she's an educator, informer, and what she does is she specializes in helping people get out of that 9-to-5 job through multifamily investments. And she does that drawing on a history of managing over 10 million in multifamily assets. She also just launched her first book. It's entitled Create Wealth, which shares how you can ditch that job with multifamily investing. And then finally, her podcast is a really interesting podcast. She does Multifamily Mondays. It's twice a month, and it's just her. She does a whole solo show and brings you so much insight and really interesting information. So guys, please welcome our panelists. So first, I'm going to surprise the panel a little bit. So I've been telling you this whole time we've talked about superheroes. That's I keep saying I feel like these guys are superheroes. Could you tell everybody, just for fun, what superhero would you be, and what would your power be? Before we get into any real questions.
Go Danielle. Unscripted pivots. So I would say that my superhero might be called Resilience Revealer. And my superpower would be able to, with my hand, shine a very bright spotlight on women so they can show others and themselves how resilient and courageous they are during the pivots of life.
Wow. All right, Nicole, what you got?
Okay, well, first of all, this pod fear that you have is total crap, because you are like such a great speaker. So thank you for being such a great moderator. Of course you start with a question right on the spot. So I should know the answer to this because my 8-year-old daughter was just schooling me about all of the Marvel superheroes the other day, and I don't know who they are, and I don't know what their superpowers are. So my superpower would be very similar to yours, to have people men and women, understand their magnificence. And I don't know that I would select or have like a name. I think that we all wake up every single day as our own superhero. I think that each and every one of us have this cape. Maybe it's invisible and it just has our own initials right on it. So I just think that we be who we are and we be our own superhero.
So I was trying to stall and think. Totally just caught off guard here. So actually something similar. I grew up reading comic books. So nerd alert, I love Marvel comics, not necessarily DC, but I read all of that. So I was going through my whole list in my head of who. Couldn't really think of one. So I would like to emanate Captain Marvel. Now, for those of you who don't know, she draws on basically the universe's power. And what I really want to say is that we are all part of the universe. We all have it in us. And we have a lot of love, a lot of voice to kind of give it out there. Because every single one of us is unique. We bring a lot of strengths to the table. So although we all struggle sometimes with the imposter syndrome or maybe leaning into the fear, we're no different than you guys. We're humans at the basic level. So what I want to say is that superpower is really to just help kind of give you that nudge, or maybe hold your hand a little bit to that fence and then just kind of, you got this, and just get going and do your thing. So that's it.
Beautiful. I'm so encouraged. You can keep that because now I got myself liked, so I have this for that. So, Pam, I want you to now kick us off. The reason that we started with that is because we all know that every superhero has an origin story. We know where Spider-Man came from. We know where the Scarlet Witch came from. So I want to know, what's your origin story for your podcast? What inspired you to do this?
Okay. 3 things actually. I'm a former aerospace engineer. So I used to sit in my cubicle with 5 screens doing the analytical work that I love, right? But one day I started thinking, well, do I want to sit here forever if I decide to have a family? But I really love traveling. So the second thing I started looking into was, how can I retire early? So this was way back then where acronyms weren't popular yet or established, like the FIRE movement and all that fun stuff. So that's my kind of true origin story, which is searching for different ways to find financial freedom and basically to allow me to travel, because I love traveling, whenever I want, and having time with my family. Truly, that's what it is, to become job optional. So it started from that. And then during the course of the pandemic, I was getting a lot of questions asked, but all kind of the same questions. So I thought, how can I reach a wider audience? And since I did not like being in front of a camera, like a video camera for like YouTube or other things, I thought, how about my voice? And let alone, let's just ramble. So it was a little bit of venting because I was isolated with my family, but also sharing my story and just putting it out there. So that's my story. Here we are.
And it sounds so authentic and tied to the things that you were looking for and that human needs standpoint.
That's right. And then to just help like women and men, students, just anyone, right? So we have a story to share.
I love it. Nicole, tell us about your superhero origin story.
It's super exciting. I was not an aerospace engineer. Thank you. So I was with my former company, Corey Engineering, and I was vice president of sales at the time, and I was engaging in all of these awesome conversations with peers in the industry, in construction, obviously. I was just having these conversations with leaders, it seems like every day, and I was like, man, this needs to be bottled up and everybody needs to hear these conversations, because as a leader, we learn from each other, right? That's how we learn, that's how we can understand how maybe one company has a thriving culture and maybe another one doesn't, and how can we adapt and share best practices. So I was having these conversations with other leaders in the industry, and I just one day woke up and I was like, I want to do a podcast, and started recording a podcast, and here we are 4 years later.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's again, we're back to your fiery drive. Because you woke up and saw the
Like,
opportunity.
if you ever just have those moments where you wake up and you're like, I'm just gonna do this today.
Not a podcast, so I'm impressed. Danielle, tell us about your origin story.
Well, I haven't been in this podcasting space as long as these two ladies have. Pam on the end was really an inspiration for me when I saw she had a podcast, and there's another crew member out of San Francisco, her name is Danielle McCombs. She had a podcast, and I thought, oh, regular people that I can actually touch and know do this? Like, you know, I mean, I always thought that was just, and my drive around this was to give women a platform to get to know other women they may not otherwise meet. And I am just enamored with the strength and resilience of the women that I meet across the country as I, am out there doing title insurance sales, and I attend a lot of conferences, and the conversations that not necessarily happen, in front of everybody, but behind closed doors really showed me how many women pivot during the course of their career, both in the professional and their personal space. And I just wanted to highlight who they were and what's going on and create perhaps a resource. My podcast was launched intentionally on March 8th, which is International Women's Day of this year, and so I held it off, but I decided to actually go ahead and do it in November, which was around Thanksgiving. Something had changed in my prior company that really ticks me off, to be honest. And in that moment, I thought, I need more joy in my life. And that's really what executed the whole initiating process. So I looked into it, talked to a couple of people. How do you do this? You get a microphone, which one? Like, you just start asking questions. And from there, it was born.
It's amazing, and I think all of you have talked about kind of a spark, like each one of you hit an inflection point where there was a spark that said, I'm gonna do this. Things I heard in that were regular people can do this, which is kind of exciting, and also the ability to, the reason, the benefit behind it, which is adapting to those cultures. So with all of that in mind, I wanna look at something that I talked about when we started, something that I heard people talk about in the audience, which is challenges. What are the challenges? So you guys have all been brave enough to jump in and do this. One of the things that emerged, I'll say before I toss this question to you guys, is during the pre-planning call, I kept hearing the phrase from these brilliant women, you have to fail forward. And I am someone who I don't want to fail forward. I would like to do it all right, please, A+ every time. and so I'd like to talk about that. How have you failed forward? What are the challenges that you faced, and how did you, what did you learn as you come across that?
I think for me personally, in the beginning, it was all about not everything has to be perfect. It doesn't have to sound perfect. My questions don't have to be perfect. None of it has to be perfect. And so that whole image thing was completely in my way. And I had to get rid of scripts. I was out with the scripts. I'm not scripting anymore. If a question comes up, I'm gonna ask the question. But I think just really not getting stuck in have it being perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. I just had a conversation with somebody prior to us getting up here, somebody that's out there. And we were talking about that exact thing. It doesn't have to look a certain way. It doesn't have to be perfect. I think the inspiring and motivating part for people that are watching is that you actually take a step forward and you're brave enough and you're courageous enough to have whatever your story is, to be heard by other people and to make an impact and to maybe change somebody else's life.
That's really important, looking at that impact. Yes, go, yeah. Tell us more, Pam. What are the challenges you faced?
Okay, so kind of echoing the same thing. Guys, I'm not perfect either, but I did struggle. So now you know my background in engineering. We are formulas based. Things are very precise because, hey, we're designing your airplanes, guys. Yeah. So we build in a margin of safety in there for a reason, but at the same time, it's very important, right? Because we are protecting your lives. So there was a lot of kind of an internal dialogue that I had to have of okay, it's okay to be fearing this. It's okay that you want to be perfect. But now that you've acknowledged this, what can we do about it today? So I took really small steps. From the outside, no one can see it. Inside, it was kind of like a storm going on. So that was really, truly the challenge, was changing that mindset slowly of, hey, I'm never gonna be perfect and I might as well just spit it out. So to be honest, the first episode probably took 20 tries. Truly, because I had a script. You guys talked about, following that script and then saying, forget it. But I did that and I thought, oh my God, I sound like a robot. So if you ever listen to mine, please forgive me. I sound nerdy on it, but at the same time, you'll kind of hear the evolution of where I started to kind of not care so much anymore how I sound it, but more of just, here's the context, here's the message. Hopefully you get it, and if I inspire you, great. If I don't, it's all good. I'm not everyone's cup of tea. So that was very relieving once I kind of got to that point. So that's my challenge.
I want to ask a follow-up question on that. Since you are able to kind of identify that transformation in yourself, what did you see externally, perhaps in your networking, in your career, and we're going to get to a benefits question, but what did you see as you became more comfortable? Because what we're talking about is it's hard to pull the trigger, right? So what happened as you let yourself be nerdy and then let yourself open out to that voice? Can you speak about that a little?
I found that I took myself less seriously, but not in a bad way. I started to actually have fun with it, and then I would start recording on a whim. So I'll stick around after, but I did bring some of my equipment if you just want to check it out. I graduated from kind of, certain style of stuff to on the go, because I love traveling. And I don't want to have to carry everything with me to have it set up. Sometimes I'll record things and just kind of do that. I hope I kind of answered it. I sort of deflected it a little bit because I'm like, oh no. This is real. This is what goes on. So, when I have a conversation with myself when I'm recording, it's kind of like this. I'll ramble and I'll say, hey, I'm coming back. And so my team will edit afterwards that little part of oh no, Pam said, oh no. Sometimes cuss words are involved. You get more comfortable, guys. It's, I'll liken it to this. I was having an informal conversation with some of the lovely crew members. I'm going on a date after this. So you get nervous. It's the same idea, and then you keep doing it and you'll be fine. Or you want to close that deal, your first acquisition, or you're networking, like what we do here. Sometimes you don't want to talk to people, right? But when you do it, you feel good afterwards. So that's kind of the motivator. And then you feel great about it, that you tried. That's all that matters. It doesn't have to be perfect like what you guys have said.
Amazing. All right, as that comes back, I just want to ask Nicole before we go to you, Danielle, to talk a little bit about your challenges. Pam mentioned internal dialogue, and you've talked a lot about how you kind of woke up and knew it. Did you struggle with any internal dialogue? If so, what, and how did you overcome it?
Oh yeah, of course. So my internal dialogue was who in the world is going to listen to this, right? Why? I might think it's really cool. I love leadership, and I'm all about thriving cultures, and that is my passion for sure, but that doesn't mean that anybody else in this room would ever want to hear it. So I had to get over one person might want to hear it, right? There might be one person, and what I have found out is there's a lot of people that actually dig my content. So as what you were saying, you just get comfortable with it, right? You take one step, and you take another step, and you take another step, and then you're like, okay, people like this stuff, right? I like this stuff. I think it's cool, so that makes it good enough.
Well, it makes that's what probably ends up making your connection, is that you are delivering, you're not trying to please every single person in the room. You are thinking of one, that's your target audience, that's kind of a marketing thing.
Yeah.
But you're thinking of one, and then you're just letting it go.
That's right.
So, and how have you seen that on the benefit side, as you've grown your following?
Yeah, I think just like anything, once you feel confident about what you're delivering and what your message is to the world, right? I don't know if the world's listening to me, but you know what I mean. Once you feel confident, you have fun with it, and people start to see that, and then they're like, I want to listen to what she has to say. I want to listen to what he has to say. What's going on with, I keep hearing about this, right? So I think the more comfortable you get, the more fun you have, and the more contagious that starts to be.
Absolutely, great word, yes, that's true. All right, Miss Danielle, we are talking about failing forward, and I want to hear what were your challenges as you launched Unscripted Pivots? Did any of that internal dialogue come into play?
Sure, it all did. But I'm a woman that wants to walk the walk and not just talk the talk. And when this came into my mind and actually I began to execute it, I thought, okay, sister, now you really have to show up. You're out there telling everybody and elevating everybody. As I meet all these women, they can do it and go. And what am I doing? Am I going to lead by example? And podcasting was something that was calling my name. And I had the benefit of seeing other people do it that I knew. And the challenges for me were a couple. One, I'm not a very tech person. I mean, I can navigate the computer well enough, for my job and whatnot. But when I started talking to people and they started naming platforms I'd never heard of, and then I was gonna have to send files and put them in Dropboxes. I mean, I've had admins do stuff like that for me, and so I did not feel well equipped, to be honest with you, at all. But, so there was that whole thing, that was a struggle in the beginning, and then where do I do this? And do I, how much do you financially want to invest in it? Do you want to, there's a podcast studio at Costa Mesa, and I'm like, well, how is it, like, okay, how do I get, and I said, I'm not doing that. And so I podcast out of my home, and maybe we'll probably, and we all do. There's a couple of different things that go on with me that may not, I have a combination podcast. It's mostly interviews, but then there's also solo episodes that get done. And I find those more challenging because to talk to nobody but the computer and look at a screen, it is really, really hard for me. And I was surprised by that. I've grown up in this process, and when Pam was mentioning, forgive me for what it sounds like early on, I'll say the same. I won't even revisit that stuff because I recall the struggle I was having in that moment, but maybe that didn't necessarily get transferred to everybody listening, who knows. I don't make this podcast really for downloads or this or that. I encourage people to share it, for sure, but I well know that if that's where I'm fixated, that I'm going to fail at this. This podcast brings me joy, it brings me connections. The relationships that have come from this are just astounding in such a short time. I have difficulty keeping up with the people that are relative strangers coming out of the woodwork, not just because they want to be on it, because they want to celebrate what it is I'm doing. And the feel goods that's generated from that are they're priceless. They're just priceless. But we'll talk more about what the setups look like, and then you'll see what my real challenges are.
Yeah. Well, and so I want to ask one more thing before we get into the how, because we are going to go into the how next. But the last thing I want to ask, this is with regard to, we are all business people, and so we are here to make money, and in our work and in our lives. And so I want to ask about the ROI. I want to know, you're putting in time, you're putting in effort. Some of you are spending money out of your pocket for podcast editors and for different things like that. What's the return on investment for this before we start showing behind the curtain of what it is that you would need to do to make this happen? Feel free to go in any order you see fit.
Okay, well, an ROI, I guess you need to, I'll take another step back, is what is your business objective, right? Everyone has a different approach, depending what company you work for, etc. For me, when I went into it, it was more of Pam needs to rant, and she's tired of hearing the same questions, and she is one day going to crack. That was really what it would be like if the same person kept asking, or if the person kept asking the same question. I thought there's just got to be a better way to be efficient. Really, that was probably my engineering brain coming in. It's like I'm more systems oriented. This is a common question, let's get it out there. So, I know I took it on, but I realized I would rather kick it back to you girls. You guys have a better message.
No, you're so
all right, so why, right? Okay, so sorry, I'll do it real quick. I know, so for me, it was not really for the financial portion, but a blessing in disguise, actually. I've had two of my favorite clients come find me. So here's how my business motto is. For me, quality over quantity. To me, I'll take that any day. So for example, I had this lady who followed me to a brokerage firm that I was presenting and teaching a 3-hour class on multifamily investing and how they themselves as brokers can go out and kind of be a partner to these investors because you understand the background, the analysis, the due diligence. So you come off with more value to provide to these clients, right? She followed me from, I guess, I forget where what school she was from. She had a Colombian accent, so she is a foreigner but finishing up her degree, but that's not the whole point. She followed me there and said, oh my gosh, Pam, I've heard of you from YouTube and then this podcast, and there's this one episode to which I honestly to God do not remember because I don't like going back to listen to myself. But she said, you talked about the struggles of being a woman and a mother, and I'm pregnant now. I'm trying to not tear up, but it's that. That's my ROI.
Yeah.
So,
That's beautiful.
I didn't want to go into teary-eyed.
Who wants to follow tears? That's a hard one right there. Great ROI.
But that's
Oprah, right.
ROI. So she's a client now, basically, and she's brought more people. So quality over quantity.
That's a double bottom line right there. That's money and human impact.
Yeah, so the thing with podcasting is it's not about monetary ROI. Who in here pays for a podcast that they listen to? Exactly, right? Like, unless you have somebody that's a sponsor on your podcast, that pays you for branding and marketing awareness, it's not about money. It's about the impact and the influence that you make in the marketplace, right? For you, it's multifamily. For me, it's leadership / construction. For you, it's all the pivots that we make in this world, in this life, right? So it's not necessarily about money every single time. It's about those moments, those lives that we get to impact, right?
Yeah.
Like the people that come to us and say, hey, I listened to XYZ episode and you taught me something that I never knew about myself, right? It's those moments. And it's the moments of realizing that you've created brand recognition for yourself and for your company, right? Because there's some strategy behind it, right? It's not just like, let's just wake up and have a podcast one day, right? Like it was also, there was some strategy behind it. Like the company that I was with had zero marketing strategy. And so this was a creative way for not only the company to have some brand awareness, but for myself as the face of the company. I was running their entire sales company, right? Their sales team. So it was like, how do I get these people on the page, how do we get a little pin? Because we weren't anywhere. So I was like, okay, let's get creative with this, right? So it's those moments, the return on investment, it's brand awareness for yourself, for your company, in my opinion.
Great answer.
Yeah.
Yes. Danielle, what you got?
Oh, I'll just finish up with that too. I mean, it is. It's about visibility. It's about credibility. It's about approachability. I mean, I'm out there and people are listening. I don't know how many, maybe 5, but what's happening is that people will come up to me and say, I heard your podcast. And they didn't necessarily listen to my podcast because I'm the host of it, but because one of their friends was on it or a friend of a friend. And the ripple effect of that is real and it's far reaching. I mean, it's actually gone international to some degree, and that's only been a few months. So, and I don't get caught up in that because I don't want this to be about ego. Once it gets there, the ego isn't necessarily an ego inflation. It could easily be a deflation. Like, oh wait, there's not enough people. I'm just enjoying the ride. It's organic, right? And I'm bringing just my authentic self to the table when I do this. So those things are just gifts in themselves. I mean, but to that end, I sell title insurance in the commercial space for a living, right? I'm not going to tell you that the people that are my target audience or my clients that exist now, the owners and the developers and the lenders, they're not necessarily looking to add another title person to their team. This has really been impactful in as much as people are talking to me and engaging with me, and they're starting conversation because we're now building our relationship on something else. And from there, they're literally like, I really like you. And now the guard is down, okay? And so that is an immediate benefit that I am experiencing. I've also recently got certified in executive coaching, and I have 2 clients that I've never met, and I only coach women because they were listening to my podcast. I mean, so go figure. It's a big, beautiful thing.
Solid ROI. What I heard again was it's all about influence. It's the ripple effect. And that makes me think, I may be presumptuous here, but I think many of us in this room, myself included, remember like when Facebook came out. Like back in the day when there wasn't one of those things, and we all saw a grid that said like, you know how you do this one circle? Well, this person tells 5 people, and those 5 tells 5 more, and those 5 tell. And so even if you have 5 viewers today, the impact can be really, really huge. And so I want to ask, tying it back to commercial real estate. These are women in the commercial real estate industry. We are people in the commercial real estate industry. What is it that is so important about that ripple effect and that influence? Who are these, these people you're coaching, these people you're mentoring? Why is it important to pass that on specific to commercial real estate from your experience?
Well, again, I've only been launched since March, but there are several people, and they're in this room. We got Kristen Croxton over there, right? She was on my podcast, and she's amazing at Capital One, and Sana is here too. That came out last week. But you're not necessarily, you have a commercial real estate component to your life, but it's, please people, just listen to this just to listen to our episode. It's so in depth. And I have my mentee here from Crew, another commercial real estate, she's in construction, and Natasha Campbell is just so important to me. And so my platform is very tied into commercial real estate because there's a lot of women that I know in that space. I only interview women I have men listeners, and maybe down the road we might have one who wants to talk about how they're supporting their wife or their daughter, right, in that space. I'm not against men whatsoever. I'm married to one. I have 3 boys. You know, I love men. But I just see the importance of women, amplifying their voices and their opportunities. And I want to create a platform where they get to talk about themselves. And what always surprises me is how they almost undervalue. They know that they're accomplished and they've got the paychecks to prove it and the title and all that. But as they're telling their stories during the podcast, I'm usually saying, whoa, hold on, let's pause. They're breezing past these things that they've done and these pivots they've experienced. And they always walk away after that hour with me and they're like, wow, you make me sound so good. I'm like, because we just don't see it. We don't often see it for ourselves, not to the degree that we should. And so, yes, there's a lot of commercial real estate component, but that's what my experience is.
That's beautiful. How about you, Nicole?
Yeah, I don't know that there's much more to add to that. You did a great job there. Yeah, that was a good summary of the whole thing. And I agree. I think, allowing people, it's not about me. My podcast isn't about me. It's about my guests and what influence and impact do they have on their teams. And how, construction is a different world. Like, it's mostly men, right? I interviewed men and women. I'm not just having women on the show, which, when they are, it's phenomenal because there's not very many of us in the construction industry. So when I get somebody like that on, I'm like, I probably squeeze them so hard. They're like, right? But it's just good. So I keep it going. But really, it is about allowing other people to tell their story and how they influence their teams, how they influence their companies to be the best, in this industry.
Wow. Can I just say this is all great? So from the commercial real estate aspect, guys, I honestly, at the end of the day, what I've realized here, in being in the industry for a little over 10 years, is that at the end of the day, this is a people relationship business. Doesn't matter what you're selling, doesn't matter what you're closing. You need to like each other, usually, right? That's why deals come to you, or you prefer a certain vendor over another. And I think the biggest takeaway here is that you all have something special within you as well to inspire others, to serve others, and find a way, creative way to connect and maybe close that deal, or maybe help elevate that friend who will bring in deals, but we'll build a bridge for you down the line, and it doesn't have to be right now. And I think what I admire about these ladies right here that I'm sitting with is that they're here to help elevate each other, one another, and help spread the message. Whereas for me, usually it's just me rambling by myself, but I do think that sometimes it inspires others as well, because that's just me being real. It's not always perfect. We all stumble along the way. So on the sense of commercial real estate, I really think that's what that is, guys. We are humans first, and we like to help one another. And that's how business flows.
Amen. Guys, first get it on the front row. I'm pretty clear this is the easiest moderator gig ever. I have 3 professional speakers, so it's really great. Beautiful and so impactful. And again, I think so important to all of us. And one thing that I heard you say, Pam, that I'll bring back to this next portion we're going to put up, is that every one of you has something very unique. Every one of you has a different voice. Every one of you has a perspective that's really important. So now we are all going to together face Jenn Quater's pot fright, and we're going to look behind the scenes. So the goal of this is we are going to demystify the process for you. We want you to see, what does it really take to do this? And the answer is, you all can do it. Yes. So let's put this up. So this is Danielle's podcast, Unscripted Pivots. And we are starting with what you see on the outside. This is what you see. Oh, wow, all this art. She has it all done, and it all looks great. Woohoo! That's great. Let's go to the next. This is behind the curtain. And with Danielle, it's really behind the curtain, because that's a shower curtain, guys, right up there at the top. Okay, and she just pulls it back when it's time. Danielle, you want to talk for a minute?
Yes, I do. Because I want to explain this. It's hilarious. What you're seeing, okay, this is a little alcove. I live in a townhouse, urban community rented place, right? And I have very little choice about where I do this podcast, because there's only one room that faces a courtyard that's quiet. The other 2 rooms in the home face garages. I cannot control the the noise that will occur, right, at any given moment. So that gets stuck in here. But you know what I want to point out? A lot of this is intentional. What you're going to see over here, it's a picture of my mom and my grandma. My mom passed 6 years ago, and her mom, and they're very near and dear. That will always be there. And then there's this little thing, and it says on air, okay? My daughter, who's 24, she went to Michael's, and I guess she painted it. She has a little microphone, and I'm looking at that. And I'm always burning incense over here when I start. These are just like ritual things. I talk to Mom, Dee Dee, kissed her picture, and I'm not nervous. I'm just getting grounded. I'm becoming like, I want to be of service during the course of the podcast, and I want to connect in a meaningful way. And that's how I start the whole thing. The shower curtain is real. That's in my bedroom. And so when I changed editors, he said to me, I want to take the video portion and start doing reels. And I said, okay, we did. And then I'm like, my bed's behind me. And quite frankly, I don't feel like cleaning the room like to the 9th degree every time. And so, when I say behind me, I mean like right here behind me. So I was like, okay, so I looked at my husband and I said, what are we gonna do? And he got me, one of those panel things you can buy. And it was just too short and not long enough. And he goes, I will hang a shower curtain. And I was like, that was good. And we did. And that's what that is. So my bed is right behind that shower curtain. And it's not the greatest backdrop. I wanted a nice curtain, too heavy for a retractable clothesline. That's literally on a retractable clothesline. So it's not really how the perfect Danielle would want to be. It's not. But I'm not stuck there anymore. It's about just putting it out, right? And so maybe one day it's going to look a lot fancier. It's not about what it looks like. It's about what the experience is for the people that are listening to it and the people that are on it, right? So that's as makeshift as you get. And if you have a bedroom and if you have a husband who will do a retractable clothesline, that thing's annoying because it literally blocks my alarm clock. I have to keep it on my side of the bed. But it's fun. But that's me.
Oh, I love it. Amazing. Thank you for that peek behind the curtain. That's really awesome. So next we'll take a look at the external for Nicole Sanchez. Guys, you can see how powerful this is. Again, she's the construction influencer. She's interviewing people. When you see this, you go, man, that is polished. Let's look behind. She's pretty polished, to be honest.
Yeah, she is.
So what she has is very polished,
shower curtain,
but also very simple. You want to speak to your setup a little bit?
Yes, it's really simple. So I don't have a shower curtain. I don't do the incense thing, but I will do when I record, which on Fridays. I don't talk to anybody prior to my recording. I literally won't talk to a single person. My daughter maybe, because I've got to get her ready and everything. But nobody else is invited into my space because I'm just I react sometimes. And so one thing could just be the end. So I just keep it clean, right? I just keep my space clean. There's nothing in my head. I'm just focused on the person that I'm going to be interviewing, which by the way, the gentleman in that clip, that was a video probably that you may have pulled off of LinkedIn. A phenomenal interview. This guy, he's my favorite, and I don't know he really was one of my favorite guests. He's Jason Romero, and he was an executive at GE for years and years and years. And he started going blind through his, as he was progressing in age. He wasn't even that old. He was like 40 something, my age-ish. And he started going blind. I heard about his story actually on the news, and so I contacted him, and he was on my podcast, and it was just such a phenomenal interview. That one was actually in my living room, which I didn't send you. So there's 2 spots in my living room. I've got this in my office set up, so it just depends on where I am. When I first started the podcast, it literally was with me and my computer and Zoom and some earbuds. That was it. There was no microphone. There was no lights. I think I just was in my office and I was like, hi, recording the thing. And then it grew into, so that was when COVID was here. And then I think COVID was gone for a minute and then it came back. So then I was doing them in person, and I had this whole production thing set up. It was my creative director would come with all these lights and all of this stuff, and then I was like, this is exhausting. Exhausting. So now that's what you guys get. That's behind the scenes.
I love it. Simple, clear, and I like too that it sounds like you are out mining for your stories too. You saw this guy on the news and you called him, but you're bringing that to you as well.
Yep.
That's amazing. All right, let's look at Miss Pam. So Pam, this is her external. You can see that she has her new book out, Create Wealth, and that she is also touting her aerospace engineering to commercial real estate. So you can see what she looks like on the outside. Let's flip to her travel-friendly setup. So this is the first one she sent. Pam, why don't you come in and tell us about that?
Okay, this is me being as real as it gets. I'm in my jammies, and for those of you who don't know me, I love Disneyland so much, so Elise, where are you? You gave me that shirt. That's part of my jammies. This little thing is a mic that I travel with, that I graduated to. That's what I was talking about. So I have it in my purse. I'll show you guys if you want to, try it out on your phone. And then I have my earbuds or AirPods or whatever they're called. But before I had a headset, so I even brought that too because it's now it's an antique. So, but this is my team's setup for me after a while. They're like, when can we get you here when you're not traveling? So that's them. But really, as I kind of shared, I'm a little bit of a nerd with comic books, right? So I'm also a little bit of a gamer sometimes. So a lot of it is a combination of like my equipment plus their equipment, and it's like, we'll make it work. So honestly, that's what I want to say, and I think that's our message to everyone. It's, you make it work in your own way, and you keep improving. So yeah.
Amazing, fantastic. Thank you. We have one more slide to show, and this is our prep. So this is us on our call prepping to share all this with you guys. And I'll leave this up while I do this next portion. And if you are someone who has any sense of a light inside of you that says, I might want to do a podcast, or my company would really benefit from a podcast, I'm going to encourage you to pull out a pen or pull out your notes app, because we're about to go into what I'm going to call rapid fire. And we are going to find out from these ladies, how does it really work? All right, so rapid fire, 1, 2, 3, pass it back and forth. Number 1, what equipment does someone need to start a professional podcast, and where can they buy it?
A good microphone to capture that beautiful voice of yours. A Rode mic is what I like. It's R, the number 0, DE. That's the brand that I like.
Great, that's fantastic.
I have a Shure mic and a pop screen that goes over it.
Sure, S-H-E-R?
Not sure.
S-U-R? Sure, unsure of the
You can
brand.
buy it on
Sure.
Amazon. If you just, I don't know how you spell it.
That's great.
That's probably about right. And then if you do video as well as audio, then you just need something that can record you and hear your voice, and voila, that's it.
So when you say voila, like I have a laptop and it
Yes.
has a computer in it,
Yeah.
can I make a
Hit
podcast?
record.
What?
Hit record.
That's
Yeah.
amazing, thank you.
No, sure, the computer's an important piece, because if you're interviewing like we do, rarely are we doing that in the same room. So, for the Zoom experience, it's like that. You can do podcasting on Zoom, but it was discouraged for me, by who was helping me along these lines. I use a platform called Riverside now. So first I was doing Zencaster, and now I'm at Riverside, and then, there's a couple layers to it. It depends if you align yourself with somebody who's gonna edit and whatnot. I mean, people can edit themselves. How much time do you have and how much interest do you have in doing it? But you can actually do this on a dime. There's a lot of inexpensive or even free platforms. You just have to kind of go and explore. I knew coming out of the gate that I was not gonna pull this off as a one-man show. And so I, went through a series of conversations, aligned myself with somebody, and I've since changed. And I have a gentleman he's from Pod Circle, and his name is Kyle Cummings, and got his name because if somebody else is doing it, everybody knows the fiscal feminist, Kimberly, yeah. So she was using him, and she's so picky. I thought if he meets her test, then this is good. And it's been great. So the microphone I use is, I think it's called Knox Ear, ATR. Hit me up if you want. I don't know if it's the most perfect one, but I do know that there are some that you don't want to use. And audio quality really matters. I mean, is anybody gonna listen? You ever have your favorite song come on, but it's just static because it's not a good connection? You're not staying there for the 5 minutes, right? So that kind of thing is important. And when you move into video, there's just a couple things to do. So any of us are happy to answer those questions. We've been there, done that. I'm not saying that I'm a professional at this, I'm not. But, I've been down the road just a bit.
Amazing, thank you. And Danielle, you mentioned a couple tools you're using in addition to the microphone and video, and that is Riverside and Zencaster.
Yeah.
Pam and Nicole, can you guys share other tools or resources that you guys are using?
So I have a couple of people that support me with I don't do any of this stuff. that. I just record and then somebody else does the rest of it. But
That sounds great to me.
That's how it goes. Yeah, I communicate, they do the rest of it. So I have somebody, if back up on where, like what you guys see, I have a graphic designer that does all of my design for each episode. And then I work with a gal that does all of my editing. I use Zencaster, and I also use Trello, which is, does anybody know Trello?
Yes, but I know it for project management.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it's exactly what
Yeah.
it's for, but we can actually like keep track of all of our episodes and make notes of each other, so.
Do
we
you
kind of
drop
like-
your actual audio files in the
We
Trello
do.
boards?
Yeah, yeah, so all the clips that I'll do like 30-second clips from each episode on LinkedIn or social media in general. And so we communicate through Trello, and then whatever she does with Buzzsprout, because Buzzsprout is my host. I'm sure that do you use Buzzsprout as well?
I not anymore. They're great. A Transistor.
Okay,
So.
yeah,
So,
they're
so
all,
Danielle said she's using Transistor, but Buzzsprout is.
Buzzsprout is my host, and then, however, they get it on all of the platforms.
Yep.
There's all the platforms that it goes on, so it's like Apple, Spotify. I made a list of it for you guys. I'm not gonna go through them all because it's a lot, but it's pretty much everywhere. So that team does all of that, and they're magnificent because I don't know how to do that part.
Fabulous, love it. Pam, I think you do more about tech, tell us more.
Yes, it's fun for me. So I used to do the edits, then I got sick of listening to myself, truly. So now my team does it, but I was probably more involved with it. So initially I used like Adobe Premiere, or nowadays if you have a really modern iPhone, it's really easy to kind of clip things out, but all you need is that audio file, the MP3, if you're not showing your face yet, which I didn't at the time. So. And then I hosted on Buzzsprout. For me, I enjoy using Buzzsprout, and then I just link it to my website and it updates automatically. Other than that, yeah, as far as editing is concerned, there's just so many softwares out there. So if you are not tech savvy and you are using another team, they'll tell you what they prefer. And then you can just say okay to that. And then for people like me who kind of want to do it a little bit, maybe have a hybrid, maybe oversee it, then I'm happy to talk to you afterwards as well and kind of tell you my thought process and kind of weeding out all the different programs and softwares out there that I went through.
Beautiful. While you have that, then let's go back down. So we've talked about the resources, we've talked about the equipment. How much is this gonna cost? What are the costs associated? Approximate is fine, but what kind of cost could someone out here think that they might be facing when they're starting to do this? And what should they be willing to invest in this? Because it is an investment.
Okay, well, probably bad choice to start with me because engineer over here goes through analysis. Yeah, spreadsheet analysis paralysis, but really at the end of the day is the quality of the sound. That's what everyone's talking about because that's what a podcast truly is, right? So I chose to spend a lot of money on my microphones. On average, probably $100. I don't know if they're more now because this was like four years ago, before things started exploding more on the market. So maybe $100 or so on a mic. I have a backup mic, so that's $200. Buzzsprout is about $12 a month to host. Let's see, if you have your own website, then that depends on what you're using on your own website, whether it's Wix or you built it yourself or all the other software. So on average, I want to say like $15 to $20 a month for that. So in a nutshell, your costs up front is really your equipment. Like if you don't have a laptop, you gotta go buy one. That could be $1,000. I don't know, but if you want all the bells and whistles like a luxury car, it might cost you $5,000.
Yeah.
That's up to you though. So I liken it to like buying a car, truly. But if you are really thinking of seriously doing this, spend a lot of money on the microphone itself to capture that beautiful voice of yours.
Beautiful.
I agree with Pam about the microphone. It is a necessity, and also you have to have headphones. They don't have to be over the ear ones. They can be the AirPods, but you do need to have that. So there's, especially an interview style, so there's no like feedback on the other end. But for me, the most expensive investment is hiring a podcast manager. So, I mean, that sounds fancy when it's coming off my lips because what am I managing? I'm not a star, right? I mean, I'm just doing this. But what I saw early on was that I did not have the time or the energy. I didn't have the know-how. And it frustrated me. And I thought, this dream is going to die right here if I don't put that off on somebody who knows what they're doing. And it was definitely a hesitation. I said, it's gonna be how much, excuse me? Like, I mean, it is not inexpensive, but to Pam's point, a car is a car. You're gonna drive a Honda, you're gonna drive a Mercedes. I wanted it to be easy, and my first experience was mediocre. The experience I have today is exceptional. And he is worth every dime, because he walks me through and he educates me about stuff. It's not just a handoff. And then he does show notes. That's So mine, it cost me about $1,000 a month. I am not sponsored by anybody. If you would have told me that's what I was going to be spending when I launched this, I would have said I'm not in. I am not in. And when I saw what was happening with the podcast and just all the benefits that we talked about earlier, it's just an investment that's worth it. So I just maybe get my nails done a little bit less or a lot less. I don't know. It's money well spent. It really is, but it's not cheap. But you don't have to go there. That's just
Great point. And I think good comparison on the cars.
Yeah.
That, you can go for the luxury, you can get someone to manage the whole podcast for you, or you can throw it in Trello and manage it yourself. Tell us more about your costs, because I know you have a team behind you doing this.
There's not much difference here. So it depends on how sophisticated you want to get, right? Like literally Zoom. How much is Zoom? I don't know how much Zoom costs, but Zoom what? $12 a month.
Yeah.
Okay. Headphones, a good mic for sure, a couple $100, maybe at max. I do have a team, graphic designer. I don't know. I might pay him like $50 per graphic design. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And then my podcast manager, I pay her $300 a month.
Oh,
So she's actually a super long friend. So
That's why.
I won. Yeah.
So that's great.
But yeah, it's just how sophisticated do you want to get with it? Do you want to keep it super simple and see how it goes? And then as it progresses, you can be like, okay, this thing is getting some legs, right? And then you start to invest more. But it's like, maybe just start little. Just start small and be like, let's give it a shot and see how it goes. And then go from there.
All right, hold that mic.
Okay.
Since you're talking about starting little, the last question is, what is your number one piece of advice for someone who is sitting out here and has that light inside and wants to do it? What advice do you have?
I get the question all the time because people are always like, how did you do this? What did you do? And I had the conversation with somebody before we got started. You just have to step out to find out. Right, like all of the things that you're afraid of, it might not even be podcasting. We just happen to be a podcast panel that leverages the platform to have our voices be heard within our industry. It doesn't have to be podcasting. There's a ton of different ways to be super creative with branding, with building your personal brand, supporting your company's brand. It doesn't have to be podcasting, but you have to step out to find out, whatever it is. Maybe it's you want to write an article for the first time and publish it on LinkedIn and see what you get, right? So step out to find out.
Great advice, love that. Pam, what you got?
We'll stick with that answer.
All right,
I
step
know
out
we're
to
short on
find out.
time.
What you
Yeah.
got, Danielle?
I'll say that you have to just get rid of your fear. I remember my mom saying to me when I was young, I had so much fear. And I was actually remember the memory right now in my head is when I was trying out for 8th grade cheerleading, and I didn't want to go. I was sure that wasn't going to get picked. And she said, Danielle, she goes, how do you know it's going to happen? She said, don't live in fear ever. And she said, fear stands for future events already ruined. And she just drilled in my head that if there was something that I wanted to do, and I wanted to become a cheerleader, and spoiler alert, I got on. I was a freshman. But it doesn't come easy, but I hear her, and she's been past now 6 years, and her voice is even louder today because she is gone, and I'm just a little bit older, right? So, and there's going to be setbacks, and you have to be willing to embrace them. And, I heard somebody say one time, like, is it really a setback or is it a setup, for the future? I didn't coin that phrase, I heard it, and I thought, this is how I'm going to live my life, and that's what I get to do through podcasting.
I love it, beautiful. All right, we're at our last couple of minutes, so I'm going to give you one last question, and then we're going to open it up for audience questions. I hope you've all been storing them away, and you have so many that you're ready to throw at us. But the last thing is, because you are all performer podcasters and yet human beauties, I would like you to each give the audience a very quick 30-second outro, telling them what you hope they take home with them today. Who's going first?
Yeah,
Shanique?
I'll go.
All right,
I
go
think
Nicole.
it's not even be 30 seconds because it's something that we have been saying through the entire conversation, that we've been up here. But it's just, move outside of yourself, get out of your own way, crush any fear that you have to do whatever it might be that you're not doing because you're afraid of what people might think, or because you're afraid of how it might impact your personal life, or whatever it might be, whatever conversation you think that you think that you're shy. You mentioned that that's a conversation that you're having with yourself, that you can have a different one. So have a different conversation with yourself to truly express yourself authentically.
You got this.
Yeah.
Yeah. This one's catching me off guard a little bit to talk about. Okay, you know what comes to mind, guys? On my podcast, I talk about life pivots, and we call them on the podcast WTF moments. And we all know what WTF stands for, right? But on my podcast, we've changed that to Women That Flourish. And that would be my outro. I would just tell you anything that you're going through, whether you want to tackle podcasting or whatever's going to happen, you're going on a date out the store, whatever, right? We are women and men that flourish. We flourish, and so when you find yourself going, WTF, and we do that daily, just know that that's a resilience factor.
Yeah.